Tommaso Cioni, the son-in-law and bandmate of Dominic Evans, was considered the last person to see Nancy Guthrie alive. He drove Savannah and Annie Guthrie's mother home that night, says he made sure she was safely inside. No one else saw it. She walked into a home with no alarm system, no panic button, no live-in caregiver, no maid, no working staff, an 84-year-old woman who could not walk 50 yards on her own, living alone in a secluded house in the Catalina Foothills, the mother of one of the most successful broadcast journalists in America. And nobody was there to help her. She had a Google Nest doorbell camera, but no paid subscription, no cloud storage, just a 3-hour window of event-triggered footage that loops over itself and disappears. By the time she was reported missing, that window had already closed, and the back door was left unlocked as a habit the family knew. 4 hours later, a masked man walked onto her porch like he had been there 1,000 times before. He knew exactly where the camera was. He knew it was not recording. He knew the back door was open. At 1:47 a.m., the camera was physically removed from its mount. At 2:28 a.m., her pacemaker sent its last signal. 41 minutes inside that house, her medication left untouched on the counter. Her hearing aids left in the house, taken in her pajamas, without shoes. He knew things only someone close to Nancy would know. Was he someone so familiar to her that she did not resist? Or was he tipped off by someone who knew that house like the back of their hand? 2 DNA profiles, 2 unknown males, neither matching anyone in the FBI's database of 19 million known offenders. Well, this is not a burglary gone wrong. This was a planned and calculated kidnapping, as nothing was taken out of that house other than Nancy Guthrie herself. And one question nobody in charge has been willing to answer. Did Nancy Guthrie know the person who took her? On the evening of January 31st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie did what she had done countless times before. She went to her daughter's house for dinner. She took an Uber, not a family member picking her up, not a caregiver riding along, just an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker, cardiac issues, high blood pressure, and limited mobility, ordering a car on her own to travel a few miles down the road. And that detail alone, the Uber, tells you something about how Nancy was living. She was part of a growing and troubling reality in America. Roughly 27% of adults over 60 in the United States live alone. Experts have warned for years that this creates unique safety risks, particularly when the person depends on medical devices and daily medication, and especially when the technology meant to protect them isn't fully set up. Nancy checked every one of those boxes, and on the night of January 31st, every single one of those risks was exposed. Annie Guthrie and her husband, Tommaso Cioni, lived about 4 miles away in the Catalina Foothills, a 10-minute drive on quiet desert roads. They had dinner together, a normal evening, the kind that had played out hundreds of times across 2 decades of family meals at that same table. At approximately 9:50 p.m., Tommaso drove Nancy home in a blue Honda CR-V. And according to Sheriff Nanos, Cioni reported that he made sure Nancy was safely inside before he left. That is the official account, and it came from Cioni himself. No neighbor confirmed it, no camera captured the moment, no independent witness has ever come forward to verify what happened at that door. He drove home, and Nancy was alone. Now, here is what that house actually looked like from a security standpoint, because this is where the questions start compounding in ways that are difficult to ignore. No alarm system, not a basic one, not a monitored one, nothing. No motion sensors connected to any security company. No panic button she could press if something went wrong in the middle of the night. The kind of device that elderly people living alone are routinely advised to wear around their neck. She didn't have one. No live-in caregiver, no maid, no companion, no overnight staff. A woman who, by the sheriff's own words, could not walk 50 yards on her own, living in a secluded home with nobody there when the sun went down. And this is the part that stops people when they hear it for the first time. Savannah Guthrie, Nancy's daughter, is one of the highest paid broadcast journalists in America. Annie Guthrie and Tommaso Cioni lived 10 minutes away. Between them, The resources, the proximity, the ability to ensure their mother and mother-in-law had every layer of protection available to a woman in her condition existed. The question the public keeps asking, and it is not an accusation, it is a genuine question, is why wasn't it provided? Why no alarm? Why no caregiver? Why no panic button? Why an Uber to get to a dinner 4 miles away instead of family driving her? Why was an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker, a walking cane, and life-threatening medical conditions left to manage on her own every night? These are not comfortable questions, but they are the questions that tens of thousands of people following this case are asking, and 57 days later, nobody has answered them. Now the cameras, because this is the detail that reshapes everything. Nancy had a Google Nest doorbell camera installed at her front door. On the surface, that sounds like a layer of protection. But here is what it actually meant in practice. She did not have a paid subscription. Without that subscription, the camera operated on a 3-hour window of event-triggered footage, meaning it would only capture clips when motion was detected, and store them locally, and after 3 hours, loop over them, delete them, gone. By the time Nancy was reported missing the following morning, that window had already closed. The footage that might have shown exactly what happened at her front door in the early hours of February first had, in theory, already been overwritten. It took the FBI, working directly with Google engineers, over a week to recover residual data from back-end servers. A week of forensic data recovery to pull fragments from a system that was never designed to preserve them because no one had paid the monthly fee that would have stored everything automatically. And here is the question that follows from that. Who knew? Who knew those cameras were essentially decorations? Who knew that whatever they captured would be gone within hours? Not a stranger casing the house from across the street, not someone who drove past once and noticed a camera on the porch. The people who would know that Nancy's Nest camera wasn't recording were the people who spent time inside that house, the people who helped her with her technology, the people who saw that camera week after week and understood that she had never activated the subscription. Then, there was the wrought iron security gate at the front of the property. In the FBI footage from that night, the suspect passes through it without forcing anything. No tool marks, no prying, no sign of resistance. Either Nancy left it unlocked, which is entirely possible for a woman who had lived in the same home and felt safe there for over 40 years, or someone made sure it would be open, and someone who had been standing at that exact gate 4 hours earlier, and then there was the back door. The family has confirmed it. Nancy left her back door unlocked, not occasionally, as a habit. A routine that the people closest to her were aware of. An open entry point every single night into the home of one of the most vulnerable people in that neighborhood. So, to lay it out plainly, on the night of January 31st, Nancy Guthrie came home to a house with no alarm, cameras that weren't recording, no caregiver, no companion, a gate that may or may not have been locked, and a back door that almost certainly wasn't. She was carrying medication she was supposed to take before bed, medication that managed cardiac conditions that could become life-threatening without consistent dosing. She had hearing aids she would need to hear anything happening around her. She had a phone on the nightstand and a car in the garage, neither of which she would ever use again. 9:50 p.m. to 1:47 a.m. Nearly 4 hours of silence. And then, the doorbell camera activated for the last time. At 1:47 a.m., the Nest doorbell camera captured its final image. A figure, male, dark clothing, ski mask pulled down over his face with facial hair visible beneath it. Black nitrile gloves, the same kind you would find in any biology classroom or medical facility in America. An Ozark Trail backpack with reflective safety strips that, under infrared light, glow like a beacon, and what appeared to be a belly band holster strapped over a thick jacket, positioned in a way that firearms expert John Correa later said no one with even a single day of tactical training would wear. The total cost of everything this person was wearing? Probably $70. And that detail matters, because it raises a question most people haven't thought to ask. Why was the gear so bad? If this was a random criminal, The cheap equipment makes sense, and they grabbed what they could afford. But if this was someone with intelligence, someone who understood forensic science, someone who knew how the FBI builds behavioral profiles, then the gear is not incompetence. It is a costume, a deliberate choice to look disorganized, impulsive, amateur, so that the profile investigators build points away from anyone methodical, educated, or familiar with the victim. But we will come back to that. What matters right now is how this person moved. He did not hesitate at the porch. He did not scan his surroundings. He did not search for the camera. He walked directly to it, as if its position was already mapped in his memory. Reached out, tapped the lens twice. Casual, rhythmic. The way you would check a light switch you pass every morning without thinking about it. Body language analysts who reviewed the footage used a specific term for this kind of movement: ownership behavior. It describes the way a person interacts with a space they are deeply familiar with, not searching, not orienting, not discovering. Moving through it the way you move through your own kitchen at 2 a.m. with the lights off. And then, he removed the camera entirely from its mount, not covered it, not angled it away, physically detached it from the wall. That tells you something critical. He knew that camera was not recording to the cloud. He knew there was no subscription, because if he believed the footage was being stored remotely in real time, removing the device would accomplish nothing. The damage would already be done, the images already uploaded. You only bother removing a camera if you know the footage exists locally on the device itself and can be destroyed by taking it. The feed went dark, and from that moment, the only device tracking what happened inside Nancy Guthrie's home was her pacemaker. Nancy's pacemaker communicates via Bluetooth. It syncs heart data wirelessly at regular intervals. At 2:28 a.m., it transmitted for the final time. After that, silence. No signal, no sync, no data. The device that had been monitoring her cardiac rhythm around the clock simply stopped communicating. 41 minutes. That is the window between the camera going dark and the pacemaker going silent. To understand what that number means, consider this. The average residential burglary in the United States lasts between 90 seconds and 12 minutes, according to FBI crime statistics. Professional operators work even faster, 5 minutes in, 5 minutes out. And anything beyond 10 minutes, and the probability of detection rises exponentially with every passing second. 41 minutes is not a burglary. It is not a smash and grab. It is not someone panicking inside a stranger's home. 41 minutes is methodical. It is controlled. It is someone, or more than one person, who knew where they were, knew how much time they had, and was not worried about being interrupted. Because they already knew no alarm was going to trigger, no camera was going to capture them, and no one was going to check on Nancy until morning. Now, think about what had to happen inside those 41 minutes. Nancy had to be located, an 84-year-old woman, somewhere inside her own home, likely in or near her bedroom at that hour. She had to be confronted, and the sheriff himself described her as a woman of great sound mind, a cognitively sharp, not someone who would simply comply with a stranger's commands without resistance. She had to be controlled, prepared for removal, and then physically moved from wherever she was inside the house through a doorway, across the property, and into a vehicle. A woman who could not walk 50 yards unassisted, taken in her pajamas, without shoes, without her hearing aids, without her medication, and without making enough noise for a single neighbor to hear. One person attempting all of that alone is under extraordinary pressure. You are simultaneously managing the victim, monitoring the environment outside, navigating a dark house, carrying whatever equipment you brought, and clearing your exit path, all while the clock is running against you. Every second that passes doubles the risk of something going wrong. But two people? Two people changes the entire calculation. One handles Nancy, controls her, guides her, keeps her quiet. The other manages everything else, watches the street, checks the exits, ensures the vehicle is positioned correctly, communicates timing. The operational load that makes 41 minutes suicidal for a single individual becomes manageable, even methodical, for a coordinated pair. Former FBI hostage negotiator Chip Massey told reporters that controlling an elderly hostage while simultaneously managing logistics and exit strategy requires a level of coordination that a single operator simply cannot sustain over that duration. Now, look at the physical evidence because it supports exactly this framework. In Fox News drone footage captured something at the rear of Nancy's property that has not received nearly enough attention. Smashed floodlights. The exterior lighting at the back of the house had been deliberately destroyed. The doorbell camera faces the front. The floodlights illuminate the back. If one person disabled the camera at the front entrance, while a second person eliminated the lighting at the rear, that is not one action. That is simultaneous, coordinated, two-point preparation. Two people who agreed on timing, positions, and roles before they ever set foot on that property. And then there is the blood. Nancy's blood was found near the front entrance of her home, confirmed through forensic testing as hers, not at the back door, which was unlocked, not in a hallway, not near her bedroom, at the front entrance. And if Nancy had been taken from her bed and moved directly out through the unlocked back door, there is no logical reason for her blood to be at the front of the house. The path doesn't require it, the exit doesn't demand it, unless she wasn't moved out the back, at least not at first. Unless she made it to the front door on her own. Unless she recognized the person inside her home, cooperated initially because the face was familiar, and then, when she understood what was actually happening, tried to break for the front entrance, tried to open it, tried to call for help, and was caught. The injury happened there, at the front door. She was pulled back inside, and they took her out the way they had always planned, through the back where the lights were already smashed, where the door was already unlocked, and where no camera had ever been pointed. And the masked figure captured at 1:47 a.m. He may not have been entering the house at all. He may have been doing exactly what it looks like on the footage, checking the front door, confirming it was secured, making sure Nancy's attempt to escape had been contained before they left. That theory is not confirmed. It is not official. But it is the theory that explains why the blood was where it was. It is the theory that accounts for the 41 minutes. And it is the theory that, when you follow the evidence, keeps pointing in the same direction. Toward someone who knew that house, knew the cameras, knew the back door, knew the medication schedule, knew when Savannah would be on the other side of the world, and knew Nancy would be alone. What happened on February 1st did not begin on February 1st. The person, or people, who took Nancy Guthrie had been in that neighborhood before. They had studied it. They had tested it. And the evidence of that preparation exists on camera, weeks before Nancy ever disappeared. January 11th, 2026. The sheriff flagged this date specifically during the investigation and requested neighborhood surveillance footage from that day. He never publicly explained why. What was captured on January 11th and what it means for the case has not been disclosed. But the fact that investigators circled back to a date 3 weeks before the abduction tells you something important. Whatever happened on January 11th, it was not a coincidence. January 23rd, 9 days before Nancy was taken, a figure was captured on a Ring camera roughly 6.5 miles from Nancy's home, walking backward past a residential property. Walking backward. That detail sounds strange until you understand how consumer security cameras actually work. Devices like Ring doorbells rely on passive infrared sensors. They sit in a low-power sleep mode until body heat triggers them awake. Once triggered, the processor activates, the lens adjusts, and the Wi-Fi establishes a connection. That sequence takes between 1 and 2 seconds. Walk toward a Ring camera normally, and those first 2 seconds capture exactly what matters. Your face approaching the lens in full frame. Walk backward, and the camera wakes up to the back of a hoodie. By the time the lens is fully recording, your face is shielded. You are moving away from the thing that is trying to identify you. That is not instinct. That is not luck. That is someone who has studied the technology and figured out how to defeat it, using nothing but the direction of their own body. And here is what makes it even more telling. According to reports, when a dog barked during the January 23rd incident, the figure fled, but maintained their backward orientation. They suppressed the most basic human reflex there is, the reflex to turn toward a sudden sound. They would rather trip and fall than give that camera a single usable frame of their face. That level of discipline does not come from panic, it comes from rehearsal. In the United States, where 83% of burglars attempt to determine whether an alarm or surveillance system is present before targeting a property, and 60% will abandon the attempt entirely if they find one. But that statistic assumes the criminal believes the system is functional. If you already know the cameras are not recording, if you already know there is no subscription, no cloud backup, no alarm connected to a monitoring service, then the presence of a camera is irrelevant. It is a prop. And the only people who would know that are the people who had been inside the house. 9 days after the January 23rd test, on February 1st, the same suspect, or someone wearing the same distinctive Ozark Trail backpack with the same reflective safety strips, walked onto Nancy Guthrie's porch. But this time, he was not walking backward. He was calm, upright, confident, and he walked directly to the camera and tapped it twice before removing it from the wall. What changed in 9 days? The answer is straightforward. January 23rd was the rehearsal. He tested the camera system in the neighborhood, triggered it deliberately, and waited to see what would happen. Nobody came. No police showed up the next morning. No neighbor raised an alarm. He learned, in real time, that he was invisible. By February 1st, he was no longer testing. He was executing. 4 major news networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN, independently reported through their own law enforcement sources that the masked figure had appeared at Nancy's property on multiple occasions before the night she was taken. The outlets described images showing the suspect with and without equipment across what appeared to be separate visits. When the Pima County Sheriff's Department responded with a written statement calling the reporting purely speculative. 4 networks, 4 independent law enforcement sources, all describing the same pattern. And the Sheriff's Department dismissed it in a single sentence. Now, consider what this surveillance campaign means if there were 2 people involved. If one individual conducted all 4 known appearances, January 11th, January 23rd, the pre-execution visit to Nancy's actual porch, and February 1st, they were physically present in the area on 4 separate occasions across 3 weeks. 4 chances to be caught on camera. 4 chances to be noticed by a neighbor. 4 exposures. But if 2 people alternated, neither one appears more than twice. The risk is cut in half. The exposure is distributed. And the intelligence gathered at one location, like how to defeat a Ring camera's sensor lag by walking backward, is successfully applied at another. That is not 2 people acting independently. That is an information transfer between collaborators, one gathering data, the other applying it. One person scouts, the other executes. One learns the technology, the other defeats it. One knows the house from the inside. The other knows how to enter it from the outside. The framework was in place weeks before February 1st, and whoever built it knew Nancy's home, Nancy's cameras, Nancy's habits, and Nancy's schedule before they ever set foot on that porch. To understand who may have taken Nancy Guthrie, you have to stop thinking about this as one person acting alone and start thinking about it as 2 roles working in coordination. One person provides the intelligence, the layout of the house, the position of every camera, whether those cameras actually record, the security gate, the medication schedule, the pacemaker, the neighborhood rhythms, the timing of when Nancy would be alone. Everything an outsider would need weeks, possibly months, of surveillance to learn. But an insider already knows all of it. That person never needs to appear at the scene. Their value is entirely informational. They stay home, maintain a normal routine, and produce an alibi that consists of nothing more than not being anywhere suspicious. That is the architect. The second person provides the capability, the physical willingness to enter a home at 1:47 a.m., confront an elderly woman, and remove her. The experience to manage a high-pressure operation without leaving usable forensic evidence behind, or at least without leaving evidence that connects to anyone in a database. That is the operative. 2 roles, 2 skill sets, 1 plan. And when you map those roles onto the people at the center of this case, the alignment is difficult to ignore. Tommaso Cioni is 50 years old, born in San Giovanni Valdarno, a small town in Tuscany, Italy. He moved to the United States in 2006, the same year he married Annie Guthrie, Nancy's eldest daughter. For over 15 years, he has taught 6th grade science and AP biology at Basis Oro Valley, a charter school roughly 10 miles north of Nancy's home. But AP biology is not a casual subject. It is college-level molecular biology, genetics, biochemistry, and laboratory technique. His students learn about PCR amplification, the same process forensic labs use to process crime scene DNA. They learn about gel electrophoresis, the same method that creates the genetic profiles entered into CODIS. They handle nitrile gloves every single day, the exact same gloves the suspect on Nancy's porch was wearing. Tommaso Cioni puts on nitrile gloves every working day of his life. He teaches students how to handle biological specimens without contaminating them. He understands, at a professional level, how DNA transfers between surfaces, what forensic technicians look for, and what they miss. But here is what most people do not know about nitrile gloves. They are rated for chemical resistance, or not forensic evidence prevention. Microtears form during physical exertion, especially around the fingertips. Sweat builds inside the glove within minutes. If you are wearing nitrile gloves while physically handling a person, controlling them, carrying them, loading them into a vehicle, perspiration breaches the material. A biology teacher would know this, which means a biology teacher would also know to dispose of the gloves immediately after use, not at the scene, but miles away, in a location where nobody would think to look. Someone found one anyway, 2 miles from Nancy's home, DNA from an unknown male inside it. Not in CODIS. Tommaso Cioni has no criminal record. His DNA is not in CODIS. If that glove contained his DNA, the result would look exactly the way it looks right now. Unknown male, no match. And now, consider what else the architect would need to know. The cameras, not just their location, but whether they actually function. Nancy's Nest system had no active subscription. The cameras could detect motion, but were not storing footage. The only people who would know that are the people who spent time in the house, the people who helped Nancy with her technology, the people who saw those cameras every Friday and understood she never paid for the service. The gate. The wrought iron security gate at the front of the property. The suspect passed through without forcing it. Either Nancy left it unlocked, or someone ensured it would be open. The medication. Nancy's essential medications sat untouched on the kitchen counter. The medications that managed conditions the sheriff described as life-threatening without consistent dosing. In a ransom scenario, those medications are the most valuable item in the house. A dead hostage is worth nothing. Leaving them behind means either the person who took her did not understand that an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker needs her pills to survive, or they understood perfectly, and keeping her alive long enough to collect was never the plan. The timing. Nancy was taken on the exact weekend Savannah Guthrie was scheduled to travel internationally for NBC's coverage of the Winter Olympics. Olympic assignments are determined months in advance. If you wanted to target Nancy during a window when her most powerful family member would be on the other side of the planet, who would know that schedule? A stranger? Or someone who heard about the trip over dinner? And then, when Nancy disappeared, every member of the Guthrie family put themselves in front of a camera. Savannah recorded emotional videos begging for help. She offered $1 million reward. She said every hour had been agony. Cameron Guthrie spoke directly to the kidnapper on video. Annie cooperated fully with investigators. Every single member of that family screamed into the void, except one. Tommaso Cioni did not post a statement. He did not appear in a video. He did not speak to a single journalist. He did not stand beside his wife while she pleaded with the world to find her mother. The man who drove Nancy home on the last night she was seen alive was invisible for the better part of a month. He finally appeared publicly on March 2nd, 1 month after Nancy was taken, walking arm in arm with Annie and Savannah to the memorial outside Nancy's home. No statement, no interview, no plea to the public, just a walk past the cameras. Draw your own conclusions about what changed between weeks of total silence and a carefully staged public appearance on the 1-month anniversary. Now, the operative. The FBI described the suspect on Nancy's porch as male, 5'9" to 5'10", average build, dark clothing, ski mask, facial hair visible beneath the mask, a mustache or goatee. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente identified what he believed was a tattoo or marking on the suspect's right wrist. For weeks, the height was the detail that separated Tommaso from the man on that porch. The FBI said 5'9" to 5'10", or online commentators said Tommaso was 6 feet tall. That 2-inch gap became the single strongest argument against him being the figure on camera, and it opened the door to a second name, Dominic Aaron Lee Evans, 48 years old, elementary school teacher by day, drummer in a band called Early Black with Tommaso Cioni since 2007. 19 years of shared stages, shared rehearsals, shared creative partnership. They met through classified ads. Evans found guitarist Walter Gonsalves through Craigslist. Cioni responded to a listing in the Tucson Weekly. They recorded their debut album at Loveland Studios in late 2009. They called it Life, Love, Love, Murder. 4 words chosen deliberately by 3 men to represent their collective artistic vision. 2 of those words are love. 1 of them is murder. And album titles are not evidence, but they are windows into the people who choose them. Evans is approximately 5'9", average build, photographed publicly with a mustache and goatee matching the FBI's description. In performance footage from Early Black, online investigators identified a marking on his right wrist, consistent with what Clemente observed from the porch camera. Every physical data point in the FBI's suspect description maps onto Dominic Evans. His record in Pima County includes felony entries, burglary, robbery, theft, embezzlement, DUI. Burglary, the unlawful entry into a structure with intent to commit a crime. Robbery, the taking of property from a person by force or intimidation. The skill set documented in those records, entry, confrontation, and taking, overlaps precisely with what happened inside Nancy Guthrie's home on February 1st. And here is the forensic detail that ties it together. Neither DNA profile from this case matched anyone in CODIS, the FBI's database of 19 million known offender profiles. For a random stranger with no criminal history, a CODIS miss is unremarkable. But for someone with felony convictions in Pima County, that absence requires explanation. Arizona's DNA collection laws have changed over time. If Evans's convictions predate the mandatory collection protocols for his specific offense categories, or if his case is resolved through plea agreements that did not trigger DNA submission, he could carry multiple felony entries in the court system while remaining completely invisible to CODIS, a criminal record, and no DNA in the system, and the forensic equivalent of a ghost. He told the New York Times he met Nancy once, at an Easter egg hunt in 2011. He said he learned about her disappearance from Instagram and messaged Tommaso to offer support. Consider that sequence. A national kidnapping unfolds. Your bandmate's mother-in-law is the victim, and your immediate response is to contact the man at the center of the storm through a private channel. That is either a friend reaching out in crisis or the first communication in a post-operational protocol, a status check disguised as sympathy. The sheriff cleared the family, all siblings and spouses. He did not clear Evans. Evans is not a sibling. He is not a spouse. He is a bandmate. He lives in the Tucson-Marana area, minutes from the Catalina Foothills. Some reports have connected him to a property in Rio Rico, roughly 60 miles south on Interstate 19, directly toward the Mexican border. 19 years of creative partnership produces something deeper than friendship. A drummer who has spent 19 years reading a bassist's body language does not need verbal instructions. He anticipates. He responds to shifts before they happen. He knows when the tempo is about to change, because he has internalized the other person's patterns over nearly 2 decades of playing together. That kind of synchronization does not stay in the rehearsal room. It becomes the foundation for coordinated action in any context. And then, the ransom. Because this detail may reveal more about who is behind this than anything on camera. $6 million in Bitcoin. Not 5, not 10. Not a round number a stranger would throw out in desperation. 6 million is surgical. And it says, I know what Savannah Guthrie earns. I know what she has liquid. I know the difference between her net worth and her accessible cash. A stranger demands 50 million because strangers dream big. An insider lands on 6 because an insider has been sitting at the same dinner table for 20 years, listening to conversations about money. The Bitcoin wallet has been dead since the moment it was created. The FBI sent a small amount as a trap. 0 activity. Nobody has touched it. If this was truly about money, someone would have accessed the funds by now. The silence of that wallet confirms what the medication on the counter already established. The ransom was never meant to be collected. It was a prop, a narrative device designed to push investigators toward a financial motive, while the actual motive sat undisturbed and 4 miles away. One of the ransom communications referenced a main individual. That is hierarchy language. The word main has no meaning without subordinates. You do not describe yourself as the main individual unless there are secondary individuals operating beneath you. 2 words in a ransom note that leaked the structure of the entire operation. 2.5 miles from Nancy's home, on a quiet residential back road called Camino Royale, a couple named Elias and Danielle Stradaguglia had a ring camera pointed at the street. Camino Royale is not a main road. It avoids every major intersection between Nancy's neighborhood and the arterial routes leading out of the area. The kind of road someone leaving a crime scene at 2:30 in the morning would choose instinctively. No traffic lights, no commercial cameras, and no reason for anyone else to be driving it at that hour. Their camera recorded 12 vehicles passing between midnight and 6 a.m. on February 1st. One appeared at 2:36 a.m. Nancy's pacemaker disconnected at 2:28. An NBC correspondent later drove the route from Nancy's house to the Stradaguglia's camera location. 6 minutes. The pacemaker goes silent at 2:28. 6 minutes of driving puts a vehicle at that camera at 2:34. It appears at 2:36. 2 minutes of margin. Exactly the gap you would expect if the driver paused at the end of Nancy Street, checked mirrors, removed a mask, confirmed the road was clear, then pulled away. Retired NYPD Detective Pat Brosnan assessed the vehicle as consistent with a Kia Soul. The sheriff confirmed to NBC that the timing matches the abduction window and that the vehicle is part of the active investigation. But here's the critical detail. The Stradaguglia's home sits outside the 2-mile canvas radius that the sheriff's department set for the initial door-to-door search. Nobody from law enforcement knocked on their door. They found the footage themselves after watching the news coverage and brought it to investigators on their own initiative. The question that raises is one that investigators will have to answer eventually. How many other cameras between 2 and 5 miles from Nancy's home captured relevant footage that was never requested? Because the perimeter stopped half a mile too short? And then, the direction. Because which way that vehicle was heading changes the entire theory of the case. South, toward Interstate 19 and Rio Rico, 60 miles from the Mexican border. A route that leads to a property some reports have connected to Dominic Evans. West, toward Tucson, Marana, where Evans lives. North, toward Oro Valley, where Tommaso Cioni teaches. Each direction tells a different story. Each story points at a different person. The FBI has the footage. The FBI knows which direction that vehicle was traveling. They have not said. Retired FBI Special Agent Harry Trumbitas told Yahoo News that the theory of an abduction for profit is becoming, in his words, less and less probable. Retired FBI Special Agent Steve Moore went further. He said, if the motive was not financial, if something else was driving the act, then whatever compelled them will compel them again. The impulse does not disappear because they avoided detection. It becomes reinforced. A person who committed a violent crime against a vulnerable target and experienced no consequence has learned the most dangerous lesson a criminal can learn: that it works. Every conspiracy has a fracture point. The moment one person realizes, the other would sacrifice them to survive. In a two-person operation, the first person who talks gets the cooperation agreement. The second person gets the full weight of the prosecution. That is not theory. That is how the American justice system works. The first one through the door walks lighter. The second one carries everything. $1 million, payable in cash with anonymous reporting accepted, makes trust the most fragile thing in the state of Arizona right now. The architect knows the operative can end him with one phone call, and the operative knows the architect will deny everything and let him take the fall alone. Neither one trusts the other completely. Neither one can, because whatever bond held them together, 19 years of rehearsals, shows, shared stages, shared silences, was built for music. It was not built for this. And the weight of what happened at 1:47 a.m. on February 1st is heavier than any album they ever recorded. The DNA is processing. The private lab in Florida is working through the mixed sample from inside Nancy's home. The glove profile may resolve first. It appears to be a cleaner sample. When those profiles are complete, they enter genealogy databases. A partial match to a distant relative is the only thread investigators need. 2 profiles means 2 family trees, 2 independent chances for a genetic connection in a public database. The cell towers do not need anyone to cooperate. The 10,000 hours of surveillance footage do not need anyone to come forward. The purchase histories, the vehicle tracking, the router logs, none of it requires a confession. The evidence is collapsing inward, and whoever left their biology inside that house and inside that glove is running out of time. Genetic genealogy identified the Golden State Killer after 40 years of silence. It connected Brian Kohberger to the Idaho murders within weeks of the crime. It does not require a tip. It does not require a witness. It requires one distant relative in a public database, one branch on a family tree, one name. And when that name surfaces, when the DNA resolves, when the cell tower data collapses on a specific device, and when the 10,000 hours of footage produce the frame that identifies the vehicle on Camino Royale, the question will not be who did this. The question will be why it took this long. Nancy Guthrie took an Uber to her daughter's house for dinner on January 31st, 2026. A normal Friday evening, the kind that had happened hundreds of times before. She came home to a house with no alarm, cameras that weren't recording, and a back door that was never locked. She was 84 years old. She had a pacemaker. She used a walking cane. She weighed 150 pounds. She was taken in her pajamas, without shoes, without her hearing aids, without the medication her heart depended on. And she has not been seen or heard from since her pacemaker sent its last signal at 2:28 a.m. Someone in Tucson knows. A neighbor, a colleague, and a student. Someone saw something that did not make sense at the time. A late-night drive, a whispered conversation, a purchase that felt wrong, a change in behavior that came out of nowhere. That person may be watching. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell me in the comments, after everything you have just heard, do you believe Nancy Guthrie knew the person who took her?